Hi, my name is Aare Puussaar, and this is a presentation about SenseMyStreet, a sensor commissioning toolkit for communities. Before I start, I would like to thank my co-authors for their contributions and UKRI for funding this research. Our cities are complex ecosystems with endless amount of interactions happening every moment. To understand these impacts, we need to look through a lens. This is where smart cities come into play, often described as web of sensor technologies that have been integrated into city infrastructure. For example, sensors on lampposts collecting data about traffic and air quality to make streets safer and cleaner. There's already plenty of smart city projects on the way and new ones being started all over the world, aiming to provide insight for improving the lives of citizens, people who inhabit, work and play in cities. From the algorithmic view of smart city governance, citizens are often seen as another passive source of data for measurement and management at scale. We can call this passive data participation. However, in democratic society, citizens are also expected to be active participants in all matters of civic life, including political discourse and initiatives run by the state and citizens themselves, whether it's reporting issues using personal computing devices or using cost-effective IoT devices to run citizen-centering projects. We can call this active data participation. Although there are a number of initiatives and projects that utilize these devices and enable citizens to carry out their own smart city sensing, it's often creating an additional data set that are separate from city data used in decision making. They're often overlooked and even discarded because of lack of trust in data quality or accountability of the process. On the other hand, the existing smart city technologies are not accessible for citizens, nor are citizens consulted in terms of what is measured and which purposes. So the issues are that citizens don't have resources to acquire technologies that are equivalent to the ones used by the city, but also there's a lack of mechanisms that could enable citizens to access already existing smart city infrastructure. For this research, we aim to explore how citizens can become active data users, not only produce data for the smart city, but also access the data for their own ends, and even commission the kinds of data they need. Our study was conducted in Newcastle, in the northeast of England. Like many other cities in the UK, it's faced with issues of congestion and air quality. Additionally, legal limits were set by the UK government which need constant monitoring for breaches. The city of Newcastle houses one of the 6 national urban observatories in the UK. This meant that there was already smart city infrastructure in place and monitoring underway. This served as an excellent opportunity to investigate ways we can open up these resources for the wider community to use. The data from Urban Observatory have been made publicly available through their data platform, and there were already community groups that were using that for advocacy in the local area. We were keen on understanding how it's been used so far by the communities. We ran an exploratory workshop to build relationships and help understand community needs for supporting civic advocacy. The workshop was also provided us an opportunity to recruit participants for designing further community resources. We connected with a group of residents from an area which wasn't currently monitored by Urban Observatory, which meant that they were lacking hyperlocal environmental data useful for advocacy work. From there on, we embarked on a 5-month-long iterative co-design process involving community meetings, mapping and citizen sensing activities, focus groups and ethnographic work. We adopted participatory action design research to help us guide the study and the iterative design process to come up with technologies that could respond to needs of the communities involved. Together with the research team at the Urban Observatory, we came up with a set of potential sensors that could be acquired or repurposed as community assets. These were a mix of scientific-grade air quality, noise and traffic monitors that could be installed on lampposts by the engineers at the Urban Observatory, and handheld sensors that could be operated by the people themselves. At the initial meetings with the group, we started mapping out the areas of concerns, the issues and the potential location for environmental monitors. Once the group had a clear idea what they wanted to monitor, they came up with a proposal for these investigations. How the Urban Observatory usually operates is by installing fixed sensors on lampposts and connecting it up with a smart city platform to gather data. In addition to enabling people to commission these deployments, they were also keen on being involved in monitoring themselves, partly because of establishing individual perspective and linking it up to personal exposure, but also to provide data for discussions around where to focus deployments of fixed sensors. Up to this point, the operation of the sensor commissioning toolkit had a heavy reliance on back and forth communication of the research team and the community, often relying on face-to-face meetings to be held to exchange information, document findings, and agree on next steps. In order to make sensor commissioning toolkit more sustainable, we started looking at technologies and mechanisms that could respond to requirements that were carried through the engagement process. We ended up with a 4-step process which made up the first prototype of SenseMyStreet. There is detailed description of this process available in the paper, but I'll go to all the steps briefly in this video. Similar to the initial meetings we had with the community groups, everything starts with identifying the areas to focus on and the issues in those places. For that purpose, we developed an online mapping interface for people to sign up for. Once mapping was done, they received an email where they could sign up to borrow handheld sensors. People could then take a delivery of handheld sensors to conduct their own investigations. We also developed the bespoke application for people to reflect on their journeys. This enabled to merge the quantitative environmental readings and qualitative experiential data to give more context to the data when discussing it with the wider community. Once citizen sensing was done and data uploaded to the cloud, it was processed and maps were produced that people could use to discuss further plans for monitoring and commissioning of sensors in the next step. Second step involved proposing areas which would need additional monitors to be installed by the Urban Observatory, so coming up with a proposal. For that, we set up an online tool which enables people to collaborate around the ideas and consolidate them into a proposal. After the proposal was approved by everyone in the community, it was handed over to professionals at the Urban Observatory who carried out the deployment and data generation. This meant that the community commissioned sensors received the same attention and went through the same deployment process as they would if the data would have been collected for scientific research or policy purposes. Once the commissioned sensors were deployed, it started providing data for the smart city. And rather than creating a separate dataset to the smart city, it became a part of the data for the smart city and could be used by citizens, researchers and decision makers. The aim of this work was to provide an example of process of designing and deploying smart city technologies that would democratize data production that powers decision making. Our study illustrates how commissioning infrastructures are effective in providing such mechanisms. Our findings also highlight that opening up smart city technologies to citizens through commissioning provides further opportunities for collaboration, use of data, and joint up thinking and action between hyperlocal communities, so that citizens can become more than just the ones with issues, but also active contributors of knowledge for tackling them. SenseMyStreet continues to operate as part of Urban Observatory at Newcastle, enabling communities and citizens to gather data relevant to the issues important to them at the hyperlocal scale, and integrating that data into the smart city datasets used by decision making. Thank you for listening.